Hey everyone, Sean Isaias from the Automator, and I watched a video earlier from Microsoft Copilot, and we all know Isaias and I have been talking about it. AI is coming to our apps and programs in every way that you can think of. It's really crazy. But what I love, like 30 minutes into this video, they talked a little bit about how they're doing the powerful stuff they're doing, and I thought it was a really good thing to talk through to help explain of why it's so amazing and why Microsoft has an amazing edge, right? Because them and Google too, don't get me wrong, but people who have a lot of other data about you, if you use that, it's same like with direct marketing. We should love marketing, right? When it's done properly and we target people based on their usage or their needs or their attitudes and behaviors, it gives us relevant information much better. And you're like, wow, that's a great ad, or that's a good thing because it's something I'm interested in. And that's kind of what they're doing here. So let's start walking through. So with each of the tools, Microsoft is incorporating OpenAI, ChatGPT into it.
All these guys.
Yeah, so those guys there. And from there, they send it over to their Copilot to start.
So it's going to be sent all the data, whatever you input, right? So whatever you were.
That's the user input.
Or whatever.
Right. Now, Copilot actually says before, this is the really cool part, before sending it to the large language model or ChatGPT, which would be very generic because, and we all do this, right? We've talked about using prompts, instructions to help get a better response from ChatGPT. Like if you just ask it, that's right. Yeah. If you tailor saying, hey, think of this, I want it done at a college level. I want it to have, all these things taken into account, or version 2 of AutoHotkey or whatever, right? You're setting the stage to make sure the response is better. And that's what they're doing is, instead of going there, they go over to the Microsoft Graph and go and look at your data and dig around and say, hey, really? You know what? He asked for this, but this is the context, right? Here is how we're going to tailor this and adjust it better. So they pull through that data and then bring that back into Copilot, which then gets shoved over to the large language model or the AI, and then it does its magic, right? Which is
it does its thing and whatever. But here's the interesting part. So, and to your point, this section here, which is your data, we did something similar. So we were sending prompts to ChatGPT, but every time we sent the prompt at the beginning, we were trying to set up some context, like, hey, we're going to be talking about AutoHotkey V2, and I want you to answer based on that context, right? And we actually even set a lot of rules, like if you're going to return variables, return them in a specific way, set the variable names like this. Basically, this section here of the Microsoft Graph is doing exactly the same, but with stuff that you care about or things that actually are relevant to you. Because just imagine that I ask it, hey, give me some car models, and it's going to send me a bunch of cars that I cannot afford, not even close to it, right? Like, So if it knows more or less your range, it might give you a list of cars that you're really interested on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then once it does its processing, it actually comes back into the Copilot from the large language model. And this is where, from my understanding, they do some verification and making sure that there's no private information, that there's no, hey, how do I create a bomb that's going to kill civilization, this kind of stuff, right? They filter it, basically make sure everything's okay, and then they shove it back into your app. So it's a really cool, smart process. And this is where part of me hates the fact that Microsoft and Google have all this data about me, but at the same time, because they're improving my results and using their tools, I'm okay with it. I don't love it, but it means now I'm going to have much better results.
Yeah, so just imagine that we're talking about meetings here, right? So it has information about your meetings. So Microsoft knows because you're using Outlook, for example, and now you're going to write up an email, and then part of what your input is you start typing the email. This is sent. All the context for the meetings is sent. The language model is going to auto-complete the email for you. But when it gives you time frames, like, okay, tomorrow at 5, it's going to check for your meetings first. And it's just going to answer or create the email containing time frames that actually make sense. It's not going to give you which it has happened to you. You recently you were typing an email and it was telling you like good morning, and it was like the middle of the afternoon, and we were like,
I'm like, come on,
don't even know like what time is it or whatever. So basically this is what they're aiming for. But the interesting part is that if I understand, this is going to be integrated into the apps. You don't have to do anything. You're just going to start using it, and it is already going to be there, which, to the point that we were making before, is going to happen more and more. And probably many companies are not going to even announce it. They're just going to go ahead and integrate some kind of language model into their search engines or their, tools. And you're not going to even notice. Microsoft is just announcing it, right?
What'll be kind of really creepy in the long run is, imagine Isaias, like I'm doing now. I go on vacation, right? And I'm like, Isaias, handle my emails for me. If I could give you access to my account, it would actually mimic how I speak and how I write my emails. And so you could really closely imitate me, based on...
I don't even have to. I just have to write, let's write an email about this one thing. It just writes it in the form
in my tone.
Lines, right?
Exactly. Right. Which is very serious. No, I'm kidding. But so really cool things coming down the pike. Very exciting stuff. And this is just one of those things, like, it's painful for me to let other people have my information, but at the same time, if they're using it well, it's really, really beneficial.
Yeah. So the one thing, this brings up the fact that most of your data now is centralized somewhere. That usually has the issue that some hackers are going to now try to focus on getting that. But those big, huge corporations, they try and do whatever they can to save something, or at least they pretend they do.
Right.
But in the end, how do I say this? Like, how easy your life is going to be because of the service makes it really hard to give them up, because I still use Google, even though I know they have half my life already recorded somewhere. But I still use it because it is so easy for me to connect my phone and my computer and pass information between them, and they know the context of everything, that I really, it's just, that's easy.
I'm out here, I'm out in Vegas, and I visited Kevin, who's a HK Hero member, and I was telling him he's like a cross between a CPA and a lawyer doing stuff, and I was telling him, are you using ChatGPT for writing your emails? He's like, how would I use it? I'm like, oh my God. Like, for him, his emails, are very specific and long. And I'm like, it's going to change your world, right? It's going to do so good a job at writing very clear stuff. And then, of course, and actually in this video, I highly recommend you watch it. It's not mind-blowing in this demonstrations of what they say, but what I loved about it was they addressed the issue of, like, hey, it doesn't always get it right. And they mentioned it in the video several times. It's close. You might have to fix a couple things here and there. And they show some examples where they get the first draft going and then they edit it, which is exactly how you and I have talked about using it.
That's the point, right? Yeah, it's creating a draft. Right. So that, because the hardest job is actually starting. Right. After the ball is rolling, that's easy peasy. Yeah. But the figuring out the first word and stuff, just pass it to the language model. It returns something that you can start working with.
Well, and it's interesting because I watched a video, which I shared in the Hero group after this one, from a guy who said, what a crazy week in AI, right? And I think it was like the third thing listed. So I don't remember the name of the company, but they were up in the stage sharing their usage of AI, right? Well, what they did, because they were really concerned, kind of like with what happened with Google, where things broke and didn't work or whatever, was they pre-recorded everything and didn't have it dynamically doing stuff because they wanted to be safe. Okay. Well, that actually, their stock price went down, if I remember right, like 10% right after the call, because they faked it and didn't trust it, right? And people weren't impressed. But with Microsoft, that's why I thought Microsoft did a great job, because they're like, hey, it might F up. You know what? But that's, they're like,
that's how it works.
We're not promising you it's perfect. So exactly. I think they did a really good job of reminding you, we're not saying it's perfect, but it really gets you going. And it's a crazy time we live in. So what do you guys think? Do you think the trade-off, comment below if you think the trade-off of them having your data and having it automatically customize, adapt to your, making it more relevant to your searches automatically without having to do all the legwork to say, hey, I really want you to think about this and this and this and this, right? Like it's doing it for you instead of you having to add that to your prompt and give the context. I think it's crazy, right? Especially because I can just get that much more work done. So
that's right.
Right below, if you learned something, please like the video. It really helps us out, or subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.